So good morning, Rosario. I'm so glad you could make time. I will do like a brief introduction about what we're going to talk about, but maybe you want to give your best 30 seconds about who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hi, Greg, and thanks to inviting me in this conversation. 30 seconds about me. I'm Rosario, a PM that I spent probably the last 6 to 7 years of his career working in startup in what I call 0 to 1 product ranges. So, literally building product from scratch. Now, I'm currently working in Coverflex, which is like a more scale up-ish context. So, I did this 0 to 1 phase. I'm doing now the 1 to 10 or 1 to 100, depending on the perspective. I'm pretty passionate about that, and that's also what I try to share in on my profiles on LinkedIn and in conferences and so on. Share my learnings and my tips and tricks from the trenches.
Yeah, great. So we met at a conference. I'm much more of an enterprise B2B guy. But I have experience coaching startups, and people that I've coached have joined and left startups. So that's where the interest comes from. And actually, when I think about the job market, it's really rough right now. I think Gen AI is going to be very disruptive. And it wouldn't shock me if more product managers are looking down market to find opportunities. So, what I thought we would do today is talk about PM in startups from a couple of perspectives. The most important one to me is as a PM being approached by a startup or approaching a startup, I have learned that that can be a minefield that should be approached very carefully. So I would love to talk about that. And then maybe we can talk a little bit about founders and provide them some guidance. Not all of them are PM experts, how they should think about the profession, how they should think about hiring folks. So maybe I will just get things started and ask a provocative question, which is, do you think every startup needs a PM?
No, not at all. Not at all. Like, or at least they actually would need sooner or later a PM. That's something I strongly believe. I don't believe that all companies can, all product companies, tech companies can work without having a PM. Like maybe it's not called PM, it's some other role that still does the PM function. The real question should be, does any startup needs a PM in the early stages? And then in that case, the answer is definitely no. There are several factors that may
So
push a founder towards actually hiring a PM or not. Um, and if you want, we can dig together now in this conversation. I don't know if we want to start actually from the founder perspective or the PM perspective, because
let's
there
start
are
from
two
the PM
different.
perspective. I have a much
Okay.
bigger network of PMs than founders, and I just wanted to echo what you said. In my limited experience, I find that we tend to think that we're critical PMs in the product development cycle, but startups are really different than more mature companies. And there is a much greater opportunity for friction and counterproductivity, I would say. So maybe we go into that a little bit. So, product managers are part of most product development in tech. Why is it different in a startup? And what do you think are the first kind of obstacles or impediments that a PM and founder will encounter?
First and foremost, when we talk about startup, we shouldn't take for granted the fact that there is a product, a real product to own. So also in that case, is there a product to own? Because if the answer is yes, then okay, it may make sense. It's one of those variables that would lead us towards adding a PM and being and hiring a PM. But if you're still not in that, if you're still in that exploration stage, like where you are just navigating through opportunities and see what may work better and what not, then probably you don't really need a PM in that stage because founders are still exploring, right? Like they are still seeing where there is a product market fit. So
So
that's probably the first and biggest obstacle. And the second one I would say is what's the expectation on the role? Like what the founder expects from this new PM to do. Do they want to just delegate the tactical work, or they want to actually empower the PM and give them the responsibility also of the strategic work? Because also on that perspective, if you just as a PM, if you are going to a startup just to do the tactical work and preparing documents and the Jira tickets and kind of babysitting developers and focusing on delivery, don't think it's much motivating for you, right? Like you don't gain that much from that startup experience. So in that case, it's better to find other opportunities, I would say.
Yeah, totally agree with that. That's been my experience. I think the reason that founders found a startup is because they have a lot of vision. And the problems that I've seen are misalignment between these expectations. A lot of times the founder will hire a PM because they need more structure and development. They need this operational work done. They are not looking for a visionary. They're not looking to justify every decision they make and have somebody saying, is this data driven and all this stuff. And that is where, the pain starts when product managers do what they think they should be doing, which is drive from a market facing perspective, think more strategically. And if you've been in traditional companies, the whole idea of strategy in a startup is different, right? It's always like a work in progress and can be, I guess, changed radically at almost any time. So I always characterize this as vision or execution. As a founder, are you looking for a visionary, somebody really to help you take an idea and make a great product out of it? Or do you have an idea for a great product and you're looking for somebody to help you build it faster, more efficiently, that kind of thing?
So
That's true, even though on this, even if you have an idea, you need somebody that has the skills to validate that idea. Because sometimes having the idea is not enough, right? So the as part of the execution, I would include also the validation of that idea, of the problem, of the needs, and so on. Because otherwise, if we think about execution as just, you know, telling the developers and designers and coordinates the very operational activity, then also there, I'm strongly against that type of hire, like having a person, a very expensive one potentially, that babysits and coordinates activities. I don't know. I don't think it brings much value to the table. So the point is, as a founder, are you willing to give agency to this person? And as a PM also, are you willing to take this agency? Because of course, it comes to a cost, and the cost is being able to compromise, to discuss with the founder. Sometimes we we read in books on LinkedIn this very perfect and ideal world where the PM is fully empowered and can do their own decision and can draft their own strategy and execute it. Of course, in startup, this is not really possible. Like you always need to compromise, to discuss it with founders, because the product is their baby or the startup is their baby. So they want to really make sure you are taking care of their baby, you are doing it the right choice. So this is something you need to take for granted. Like, okay, I'm joining a startup, I need to deal with founders. And I will never be 100% empowered as I could be in a bigger company.
But the truth is, Rosario, right? I come from this enterprise background. There's always like leadership who's an important stakeholder. So it's a spectrum. And you also made me think that if you don't have experience in startups, there are also investors. There are multiple stakeholders that you have to really take into account. And I love the thought about validation. That's where I see a lot of startup founders fail. They just figure they can build it. I could talk about that for a long time, but I just want to reiterate that product management is a science. It's a soft science, right? It's like psychology or something else, but it's not just a dark art. So if you're a founder, getting counsel from somebody who's gone down that path, who's actually shipped something, is a really good idea. And I want to switch to think about really practical guidance for PMs. But I would say, I believe startups, a lot of startups don't really need a PM, but they could almost all benefit from like a coach, like somebody with product management, shipping product experience to just help them avoid the obvious errors that you see all of them making, right? So,
100% agree with you. Like, actually, most of the times, the earlier is the PM hire, in my opinion, of course, the most likely they were actually looking for PM coach rather than an actual full-time PM. Because as you said before, like most of the times founders don't have a PM background or product background. They may have some engineer taking the co-founder role, but still engineering mindset is slightly different from the actual product mindset. So that validate and iterate type of process. So in that case, probably what you need is just somebody that meets you once a week, once every 2 weeks, whatever, and just give you guidance rather than having a full-time person that in the end that is powerless.
someone who gently points out the obvious. That's my experience, right?
Yes,
But
yes,
super
that's it.
valuable. They shouldn't, underestimate the value there. So let's take a scenario that I have been a PM. I don't have a lot of startup experience. I'm in the job market because of my domain expertise or my network or something else. I'm thinking about, I've been approached by a startup. I found a startup that might be a good opportunity. I'm curious, like maybe we can distill what are the three key questions you should ask, you know? And then, and maybe they naturally come out, but it's kind of like, what are the red flag responses?
Absolutely. Let's go. Uh, First one, we already mentioned that, but the very first question I would ask is, what's your expectation on this role? Like, what do you expect? Why do you need the PM? Why are you hiring it? Um, Second question, then we will dig into also the answer. Second question I would ask is, okay, have you ever worked with a PM before, with a product something
Hmm.
role before? And if so, how was it? Third question is, how is currently your product workflow like? Um, because as I said before, there is always somebody doing the PM function in the company. Maybe it's one of the founder, maybe it's an engineer, a designer, whoever. Uh, but that process is already in place. So you need to understand, even if it's not formalized, you need to understand how the product is being developed in that moment, what are the dynamics, and you from that you also being able to spot some potential red flags and so on. Fourth and last question is uh, ask to the founders what's their management style, how they deal with the situation where there is not an agreement, where there is a disagreement between the people. And on this, I would also say try to meet all the founders because sometimes, in the hiring process, you may have the chance to meet the CTO, like the founder covering the CTO function, or maybe the CEO, but you will never meet all of them. Or from my experience, it's very unlikely to meet all of them during the hiring process. Actually push towards talking to each and every of them just to get to know them as a person, as a managers, to understand if you get along with them, if not, if you spot also there are some red flags in terms of uh, management traits. Uh, so these are the questions. Then in terms of red or yellow flag in the answers, first and foremost, expectation on the role. As we said before, if they need a tactical role, so you to take care of what they basically feel boring, the tasks that they feel bored, like writing requirements or giving tickets, assigning tickets to developers or this kind of stuff, then I would really be uh, concerned about accepting that role because once again, they need just a delivery manager, not a product manager. Then the second question was about if they already worked with the PM before. In that case, if they never worked with a product manager, really try to understand why then they are feeling the need of hiring a PM. And also be aware that
So
there will be more frictions in your journey because they never worked with the PM. So they need to set boundaries and need to understand where exactly, what's the
so
where's your freedom, where your freedom starts or your agency starts and where the role of founder stops. Or eventually, if they had a PM before, ask them how they worked with them, like what was the process look like, in which context, because also from that situation, you are able to understand a lot of shades and small details. The other question was about how the process works in the company, like the product workflow is in place in the company, the startup. In that case, also, this will help you understand what you're replacing, basically. And this means also that will be most probably the most critical relationship you need to take care of. Like imagine, usually it's a CTO, like one co-founder doing the CTO role, or some other founders that are actually covering this PM role. This means that at least until you build trust with them, they will kind of micromanage you, or they will try to overlook at everything you do because they are not sure you are replacing them properly. Of course, we are always talking about generalization, then each case is specific. But the same would happen with engineers covering the PM role, because if an engineer is covering the PM role, it means that the organization or the product workflow is very engineering driven. And then out of nowhere, a PM comes in place, and you start saying, okay, what we should build, what makes sense to build, and start doing discovery and validating. They may not like that much. So you need also to make sure that this transition process is taken care of. Last point, of course, managerial style of founders. I think that's pretty understandable. What could be the red flag, yellow flag on the founder is just to make sure, you have an alignment of values besides the product knowledge or product workflow, whatever is business related. Because you don't join a startup just because you want a job or just because you want to have a new experience, but you really need to also get along very well with the people, since you are most likely in a context where there are 10 people, 15 people. You will work days and nights there, you will work extra hours there. So that's super important. Also for making sure you will have the right agency in your experience.
Yeah, agree with all of that. I really like it. Some questions that came to me that I think are derivative, and maybe you can kill a couple of birds with one stone. I think it would be interesting to ask, what will work better in your development process once you have a PM? Right? So that makes them think about what the process is and what their expectations are. So if they're like, well, Jira tickets will get resolved faster, blah, 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 that takes you one direction. Or, we will actually deliver what the market needs. I think that's a greener kind of signal. So I think that's one thing that I would ask. I would then maybe ask, like, who are the stakeholders who need to be on board for a PM to be successful? And, where are they? Because if, like you mentioned, you're walking into a situation where there's an engineering manager who's been doing it 20 years, who knows the domain and doesn't need some PM telling her what to do, that's a very complicated situation. So I would do a high level, like, who do I need on my side to be successful? And do I have to win them over? Are they waiting for me? Are they going to receive me with open arms?
Greg, on this, let me interrupt you just to also add another question that would make sense, which is what success looks like. Like,
Bingo.
if I'm a successful PM, why? Like, how would I reach that success for you? And this is also super important to then being able to assess your performances in the future. Of course, in startup you will not have any performance review or anything like that. But there may be situations where they may point fingers at you, right? Like, or you may be pointing fingers at them and saying, "Oh, but this is not working. This yada yada yada." So
Yeah, I
defining up
totally
front what success looks like, it's fundamental.
Totally agree. And that goes for anybody. And I would push back a little bit and say there should be something like a performance review. It won't be the formal thing like in a big company, but you should set 30, 60, 90, 1 year goals and objectives and check in and say, have I met them? So I love that question. And success exists at multiple levels. And I think an additional or related question I would ask, I always want to know, what is the founder trying to achieve at the macroscopic level? Do they want to sell this thing in 2 years? Do they see themselves as like emperor of this huge, massive global thing? Are they just trying to make a living and have a better lifestyle? Some people, I see this more and more, just want to contribute to a better world. They really aren't looking to make a kingdom. So I think understanding the founder's conception of success, and to your values point, making sure, like, if all they want to do is make money while the iron's hot or whatever, you have to decide, are you going to be comfortable doing that? Are you going to be comfortable doing whatever it takes to do things? And I think founders who are looking for a quick exit, right, there's going to be a lot of pressure on the metrics that drive valuation. So you just have to decide and maybe talk to some people. I think that's a good idea with experience to say, hey, this guy has a bunch of powerful investors and they're telling me they want to sell this thing in 18 months. What does that mean? What will that mean to me in terms of pressure, in terms of priorities? I think that's an important question.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's true. Although I must say it's a tricky question because sometimes founders don't tell you that they are not that transparent
Yeah, absolutely.
and told you like, okay, I want to make money and become rich out of this gig. So it's something you need to read behind the lines. Uh,
Yeah, I
but
think if they are dodgy, if they don't answer that question directly, it's time to look for a lot of these indirect indicators. If they can't just give you an answer, because there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I'm in this. This is a huge opportunity right now. I want to strike, as I said, while the iron's hot, and I'm hoping we can be at, 100 million annual revenue in a couple of years. That's a perfectly valid response. There's nothing wrong
I
with that, but
know
you're right. Y- you
But
know,
most of the founders actually fully embrace this startup founders narrative, for which they will all tell you that they want to change the world, they have a fantastic
Mhm.
vision. Even the ones that are the greediest one, the ones that are actually looking just for money, which is totally fine, no problems at all with that. It's just that at
So
least from my experience, they don't say it out loud, or at least not in the interview process. Maybe during your experience with them, working side by side with them, they will tell you, of course. But during the hiring process, they want to always show themselves as the best one, the perfect ones,
Yeah,
and with all the positive attitude ever.
yeah. So I will try to distill out of this, or I will actually, AI will distill like a set of questions that we came up with. I'm wondering if there's anything non-obvious for founders that we can explore. What we've said is that you
so
should resist the urge just to hire a PM to hire a PM. You may not need it early on. You should be very clear about what you expect and express your, values very clearly. Like, why are you hiring this person? And make sure you're hiring somebody who's okay with that. If you want a delivery monkey, sorry to use that term, There's nothing wrong with that. That may be what you need, but you're much better served being straightforward about that than hiring somebody who thinks they're going to come in and really contribute to the vision and all that stuff. You should consider a coach, probably. You may not early on need to hire somebody, but it's almost foolish not to seek counsel from somebody who's been down that trail a few times. I would look for a coach who's delivered in your domain in a similar situation and try to engage them, talk to them once a week, once every couple of weeks. Anything else you can think about, Rosario?
Well, I think there are, if we want to just abstract a general rule, I think there are 3 or 4 situations where a founder should consider to hire a PM. So the first one is when none of the founders have a product background. The second one, of course, with the caveat of watch out if you actually need a product coach or a full-time PM. That's also important. The second topic is when, or a category is when you have a real product to own. So maybe you already have reached the PMS or you are close to reach product market fit. So in that case, you will actually benefit from having a full-time product person taking care of speed up this process, this
So
to PMF process. Subcategory of this as a subset, I would say, make sure introducing a product person in the organization would speed up things, because that's not necessarily true, right? So if you're actually slowing down by adding a new product person, don't do it. Because in this phase, in this early stage phase, you don't need to slow down, to processualize, nothing like that. Yeah? You need to ship fast and iterate and validate and experiment and reach product market fit as fast as possible. And the last one is when your business requires it. Like hire a PM if you are building a very technical, you're building a product in a very technical domain. Like I want to build a banking app. I want to build the construction SaaS, whatever. So in context where you may benefit from having a product person that has a strong background in that domain, which is a very technical domain. This would be my suggestion. And then remember that there is no one-size-fits-all answer. There is also an interesting research from Lenny, I think, that Lenny newsletter, they published, I don't know, some years ago, if I'm not mistaken. They did this survey asking for, the most successful tech products when they hired their first PM. And the answer is, it depends. Like there are some companies that hired it after 1 year, other after 3 years, after reaching 50 employees, after reaching 10 employees. So it really depends. But you can take a look at that research also to understand in which cases they hired their first PM, just to give you an idea. Because of course there are like hundreds of variables that may influence the decision-making process here.
Yeah, very good. I think in closing, I think we've covered a lot of good ground. My guidance to founders would be do not underestimate how difficult it is to build a product business, right? Building something is easy, relatively easy. The hard part is building the business. And just like most people wouldn't try to build their own home, they wouldn't defend themselves in a court of law, they wouldn't try to remove their own appendix. You should really not try to build a product business without somebody who's walked that path. It's a trap.
Yeah, completely agree with you. But be aware of that. Like you need to be willing to delegate that responsibility, or at least coordinate with another person that responsibility. So that's an important level of awareness you need to have before hiring the first PM.
Yeah, great, Rosario. Thanks so much for your time. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Likewise, thanks a lot, Greg, for having me.